Imagine a world where nobody laughed at jokes, where humor was as rare as a unicorn. Crazy, right? But in the early 1500s, before a man named Desiderius Erasmus came along, laughter was a lot different. People laughed, sure, but it was more like a big, loud guffaw, like when someone falls down and everyone roars. Erasmus changed all that. He showed people how to laugh at the silly things in life, and in doing so, he changed history. Erasmus was a funny guy, but he wasn't just a joker. He was a brilliant scholar, a writer, and a man who saw the world in a different way. He lived in a time when the church was all-powerful, and most people didn't question what they were told. But Erasmus had a gift. He could see the absurdity in things, and point it out in a way that made people laugh and think. One of his most famous works is called The Praise of Folly. Now, folly just means being silly or doing foolish things. In this book, Erasmus pretended to be folly, the spirit of foolishness, and he talked about all the silly things people do. He said that without folly, life would be pretty boring. For example, he said that no one would get married or have kids if they really thought about it. After all, marriage is hard work, and having kids is even harder. But people do it anyway because they're a bit foolish, and that's what makes life fun. Erasmus also poked fun at the church, which was a big deal back then. He said that some of the things the church taught were just plain silly. For instance, he joked about how theologians, people who study religion, tried to explain complicated ideas like original sin, and how the bread and wine in communion could magically turn into the body and blood of Jesus. To Erasmus, these ideas were so absurd that only a fool would believe them. He didn't just stop at funny jokes, though. Erasmus used his wit to point out serious problems. He talked about how the church had become more interested in money and power than in helping people. He criticized the priests and monks who made a living by selling indulgences, basically forgiveness for sins to people who could afford to pay. He also mocked the popes, who were supposed to be spiritual leaders but often acted more like kings, fighting wars and collecting riches. One of the most shocking things Erasmus did was write a satire about Pope Julius II. Pope Julius was known as the warrior pope because he led armies into battle. Erasmus wrote a funny dialogue where he imagined Julius trying to get into heaven, but St. Peter wouldn't let him in because of all the bad things he had done. This was a big deal because the church was still mourning Julius's death, but Erasmus's joke was so clever that people couldn't help but laugh. Erasmus's writing became incredibly popular. His books were translated into many languages, and people all over Europe read them. But with popularity came problems. The church didn't like being made fun of, and some people called Erasmus a heretic, someone who goes against the church. But Erasmus wasn't scared. He believed that making people laugh was a way to make them think, and he was willing to risk being in trouble to do it. In the end, Erasmus's wit and humor helped change the way people thought about religion and authority. His writing inspired a lot of the leaders of the Protestant Reformation, a movement that challenged the power of the Catholic Church. By making people laugh, Erasmus showed them that it was okay to question things and to think for themselves. And that, in a world where people were often told what to believe, was a pretty big deal. So, the next time you laugh at a joke or see the funny side of something serious, remember Erasmus. He showed us that humor can be more than just fun. It can be a powerful tool for change.